In January 2025, a small private aircraft was flying over remote regions of Alaska, more than 500 kilometers from the nearest human settlement. Beneath it stretched an endless white wilderness of snow-covered mountains, frozen rivers, icy lakes, and dense forests. There were no roads, no houses, no signs of civilization, only snow, ice, and deadly cold. At first, the flight was calm. The pilot monitored the instruments as the aircraft moved steadily over the frozen landscape. But nature suddenly revealed its true power. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The wind grew stronger. Powerful air currents violently tossed the aircraft from side to side. A snowstorm engulfed the sky, and visibility quickly disappeared until only a wall of snow and ice surrounded the plane. The cockpit shook under the force of the storm. The pilot tightened his grip on the controls, fighting to stay on course. Then the first red warning light appeared on the instrument panel. Seconds later, another lit up. Then, another. Electronic alarms filled the cockpit. The engine began to sputter, and its steady hum turned into disturbing interruptions. A metallic grinding noise echoed through the cabin. It sounded as if the aircraft was tearing itself apart. The pilot struggled against the turbulence, but nature proved stronger. The aircraft suddenly began losing altitude. Slowly at first, then faster and faster. Snow-covered treetops flashed past the windows as the ground rushed closer. A deafening impact followed. The plane slammed into the frozen earth with tremendous force. The fuselage ripped apart, scattering wreckage across the snow. Ice and snow exploded into the air. Then came silence. Several minutes later, the pilot opened his eyes. Every movement caused pain, but somehow he had survived. He crawled out of the wreckage and faced a terrifying reality. There was nothing around him except snow, forest, and endless wilderness. The nearest help was hundreds of kilometers away. As temperatures dropped below minus 40 degrees Celsius, he knew that surviving the night without warmth would be nearly impossible. Using pieces of the wreckage as shelter from the wind, he searched for anything that could burn. After several failed attempts, a small fire finally came to life. That night, he barely slept. The wind howled through the trees while the cold grew harsher. He constantly woke to keep the fire alive. The next day, the real fight for survival began. Hunger slowly drained his strength. Vast frozen lakes and endless snowfields stretched before him. Strange sounds echoed from the forest. Cracking branches. Unfamiliar rustling. It felt as if something was watching him. Loneliness became more frightening than the cold. When the second night arrived, fear took shape. Movement appeared among the trees. At first, he noticed only a few glowing points in the darkness. Then dozens of yellow eyes stared back at him. It was a pack of wolves. They silently circled his camp, keeping their distance. They did not attack, but they did not leave. The fire remained his only protection. By morning, he had barely closed his eyes. On the third day, he realized he could no longer stay near the wreckage. Weak and exhausted, he pushed forward through the deep snow. Every step became harder than the last, but he refused to stop. Then he saw something he had almost given up hoping for, a thin ribbon of smoke rising above the treetops. At first, he thought it was a hallucination, but the smoke remained. He quickened his pace. Soon, a small wooden cabin appeared among the trees. Smoke drifted from its chimney. There were people inside. After nearly 3 days of battling freezing temperatures, hunger, loneliness, and the unforgiving wilderness, he had finally reached civilization. Against all odds, in one of the harshest places on Earth, he survived. A story that could have ended in tragedy in the frozen emptiness of Alaska became a true miracle of survival.